So hello, thank you for having me. By the way, Steve, we have a similar background in the sense my family is also from Crete, and although my papu is not from Slovakia, I believe he left because of an old school vendetta way back then. So it's kind of funny to hear you talking about that. Oh, we may stay away from me, Steve. Okay, you started out with a shout out, and Deborah, you asked me to talk about real entrepreneurship, getting out there and doing it. And I will say that I am a serial entrepreneur and have experience in doing that. But I want to start out like Steve with a shout out, and I think this will be telling in some of the other things that I want to touch on. I had the good fortune of being at MIT a while back, which had and has probably one of if not the best entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world. I benefited from it greatly. It was very easy to get a company off the ground and so forth relative to other places. But at MIT then there was something called the entrepreneurship competition. It was the 50K, $50,000. It's since became the 100K, and I think got bigger than that. And a few things strike me here. The 50K at MIT then was not nearly as lavish as this setting here. There were not people in the room, there were not panelists, there were not people like Deborah Wynn-Smith, who runs the US Council on Competitiveness, there were not university presidents. It was a bunch of students in the dining hall, standing up on the tables, pitching their ideas. There was no talk about ecosystems. I didn't know what an ecosystem was then. I had no idea what that was. Entrepreneurship as such was not a subject matter, and innovation as a phenomenon was not a thing. There was a bunch of us that wanted to start companies, and we got together talking with other students the same age as us and so forth about how to take that next step. Now, this brings me to the shout out. The MIT entrepreneurship competition at the bottom of the application said prize money put up by George Hatsopoulos, who my guess is that does anyone in this room know who George Hatsopoulos is? Well, I'm glad. I'm bravo. Good for you. Oh, you did? Well, I wasn't smart enough to do that, but I'll get back to Hatsopoulos in a moment. George Hatsopoulos funded the first entrepreneurship competition at MIT before all universities had entrepreneurship competitions, and at a time where the parallel at Harvard was not an entrepreneurship competition, but a business plan writing up competition, because they did not want their MBAs getting mixed up in messy little startups when they were being trained to become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Okay, so George Hatsopoulos is someone that should get acknowledgement, as this innovation and entrepreneurship thing has genuinely become an international phenomenon, coming 15 years later to his native Greece. So I also wanted to give a shout out to, make a shout out and make it to George Hatsopoulos. By the way, his daughter is also a serial entrepreneur. I guess a few things, and I don't even know how much time I have left, but.
You have
2
2 minutes.
minutes, okay, well. That's okay. I have to come up with a way to consume 2 minutes now.
If I may interrupt you, his nephew is taking part in this conference. His name is George Philatopoulos, and he's the nephew of George Hatsopoulos.
Okay, I will do that.
He's somewhere around here.
Okay, well then I'm going to do one other shout out since Hatsopoulos is known here.
And now you have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, I'll do it quickly. I was having dinner with a fellow trustee at the American College of Greece, where Deborah is also a trustee, and I told this exact story to a man named Odysseas Kyriakopoulos. And as I went through the story, he wanted me to clarify which Hatsopoulos he was talking about. So I told him, George Hatsopoulos, professor at MIT, dean at one point in time, and he said, you know, Dr. Hatsopoulos is very, very sick. Would you mind if I told his wife this story, because it would make her very happy? I said, absolutely do that. So he literally picked up the phone while we were having lunch in New York, called her up, and she sent me this long email and so forth. and I met their daughter afterwards. So anyway, more on the Chatsopoulos story. Anyway, one word I'll say about promoting entrepreneurship in Greece. This stuff is wonderful. It raises awareness to the policymakers and brings it to the attention of large corporations and so forth. But entrepreneurship, for it to happen, you have to support the actual entrepreneurs, the kids that were in that dining hall when as I was, that were prepared to make very little money and take all the risk and risk not finishing their PhDs on time and so forth. It's about those people, whether they know what the terms entrepreneurship, innovation, ecosystems, all this stuff. It's about supporting them. Without them, you're not going to have an innovation economy. So I'll leave it at that.